Welcome to the post-review review show, the review show where we review board games after other people have reviewed them, and we add what we think has been missed or overlooked. But this week, I don't know why I always say this week.
No, they're not weekly things.
No,
but
this time, we're going to be talking about a game that has received less attention than I think it deserves, and so there's not quite as many reviews as usual, though there are a couple of high-profile reviews. Sam Healy, the Dice Tower, reviewed it.
What is it?
I'm glad you asked. It's Wasteland Express Delivery Service by Pandasaurus Games, designed by, hold on, I want to get this right, Matt Riddle, right? Yeah, Matt Riddle, Ben Pinchback, and Jonathan Gilmour. And this is quickly becoming one of my favorite games.
I really like it too.
It's also interesting because Jonathan Gilmour is also a co-designer of one of our absolute favorite games, Dead of Winter, which I've always sort of attributed more to Isaac Vega. And this game is causing me to really rethink that. I mean, I should note that there's no real reason why I thought that. I knew that Jonathan Gilmour designed Dead of Winter, and then Isaac Vega sort of finished off the design. And what happened here is the exact opposite. Ben Pinchback and Matt Riddle had a pick up and deliver game, and then Jonathan Gilmour came in and really helped. He was set in space, and now it's set in this Mad Max looking post-apocalyptic future. And he really helped simplify the game, and I think really helped propel it to what it is now.
It is a pick up and deliver game, and we don't really have a lot of pick up and delivers at this weight, and so that kind of lets it occupy a niche in our collection.
What weight would you say that is?
I would say this is like
medium to heavy? Yeah,
because it's not, or maybe it's just the theme that makes it more approachable, but it's not an unapproachable game.
Right. In fact, I would say that the time on the box is pretty accurate, 90 to 120 minutes. Although I've noticed some people in the forums saying the game's taking them closer to 3 hours, and I have a hypothesis as to why that is, and I think that they're doing something that we'll address later on in the review that that can make the game go longer. I agree with you. I think when it comes to pick up and delivers, there's a lot of classics out there, many of which I've never subjected you to. Such as, I'm forgetting the name of it. It's the classic pick up and deliver in space. This is embarrassing. Merchants of Venus. And for my taste, a game that's a pure pick up and deliver game, I prefer something along the way of what is probably my favorite pick up and deliver game, Broom Service, right? It's quick, it really focuses on this one mechanic, and then they have this fun hand management bluffing thing that goes on. This is a great game.
Yeah, but I would definitely say this is lighter.
This is way lighter than this. And it's also a more pure pick up and deliver.
Yeah.
This game, Wasteland Express Delivery Service, is a really, really good implementation of the pick up and deliver mechanic with a lot of, I don't want to call it icing, there's a lot of other game that's strapped onto that engine and really propels it into a different experience altogether. If you look at the board here real quick, you'll see that there are places that need things and places that sell things, and it has a really neat demand-driven system. So you can see that as more things demand certain goods, then the value of them go up, and then so you can buy guns for 3, and then you can bring them over here to New York and deliver them for the going price, which is 12.
It's 10.
10?
Yeah.
There you go, right? Classic pick up and deliver. Now what's neat about this game, what they've strapped onto this game is combat with raiders. So these raider trucks that are driving around the wasteland, you can interact with and do combat, and that's a really simple system. You turn over a card, and that's actually really hard. That's the hardest raider truck in the game. But a 5 would be something you expect to see, and depending on how your truck is modified, you roll a certain amount of dice, and if you meet that amount, you win, and you get to take these things, right? So that's a whole other way in which you can get goods in this game and deliver them, which people, when they first play this, are going to, one of the first things they're going to think to themselves is, wait a minute, why would I bother buying anything, picking up anything, when I can just steal it from raiders for free, right? I mean, that's the first thing that went through my mind the first time I played it, and I've noticed other people say similar things, that that this combat is almost, I'm going to use the B word here, even though it's broken, right? That the combat is so effective that there's no reason to do anything else in the game. And I'm here to tell you right now that you're wrong. That in fact, combat is not necessarily the only way to win this game. I have seen people win this game without ever fighting a raider.
Which is usually how I roll. I don't like to fight the raiders, and then last night we were playing, and I thought, because I had 2 machine guns, so I was well equipped to fight. That gives you a +1 on each die roll. Mm-hmm. And so then I just did it, and I attacked, and I didn't buy anything, and it was fantastic.
Which reminds me...
I'm not gonna lie, I liked it a lot.
So you've won 2 games in a row now. Mm-hmm. The last game you won, you didn't do combat once.
If I did, it was only once.
Or it was like because I put a raider in your space. You can move raiders around the board and cause them to attack your friends. But whereas last night, you...
I only bought one thing once until I realized that I was better off fighting because I had modified my truck in such a way.
And that's partially because she was playing as Zero, which you can see here. She has a really cool afro, and I like these little skulls under her eyes. And she drives a big tank. And she starts with 1 gun. Now, what's interesting about this game, like many games, is it has somewhat asymmetrical starting abilities. So Zero starts with a gun and armor. If you're gonna play as Zero, you're more likely to be fighting raiders. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that I really want to emphasize about this game, why it's so special, why I love it so much, is not that it's necessarily the most innovative thing that I've ever seen. You know, pick up and deliver games exist, fighting raiders exists. I mean, in a lot of ways this game reminds me of Zia or Merchants and Marauders. But what's so special about this game is that it's really, from my estimation, perfectly balanced. And the variable starting abilities of the characters are in this line. So you can start as Zero, who is better at combat. You can start at Bandit, who's this cool looking guy. And he drives a Trans Am or something.
It's over there.
With a trailer on it, and he is just faster than everybody else. And that's not to be dismissed, because movement around this wasteland is really important. But what's interesting about this is that the player powers are more kind of like a nudge in a direction. Mm-hmm. You can play as Zero and not necessarily go the combat route.
Which I've done.
And still win.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I won the time that I did that, but I know that I definitely played as her.
And went non-combat. Mm-hmm. But even if you didn't win, it wasn't because... Did you feel like...
No.
If you play Zero, you're locked into a combat strategy?
Mm-hmm. No, because, I mean, you want to have a machine gun anyways, if you can.
Right.
Regardless of your strategy, just for protection.
That's the thing.
And so, it's just, I had other things to buy at the mod shop when I went there. I didn't have to buy a machine gun, which I would if I was another character to kind of round out things.
By the end of the first round, the starting abilities of the players are mostly mitigated, right? By the end of the first round, you visited a mod shop, which is this thing. So every location you can pick up and deliver things, or there's an outpost related action that you can take. So for instance, these are mod shops. This is where you buy computer chips, which is really important for one of the public priority first class objectives we'll talk about in a minute, etc., right? So by the end of the first round, it's very easy that every character has picked up an ally, either by going and buying an ally at wherever they can do that. I always forget. Oh, the Rock. Or they've gotten one by completing one of the faction quests. So it's more like it gives you a starting place. And it's a really nice, because some games, and there's one in particular I want to talk about in a minute, Scythe. Mm-hmm. Some games that have variable player abilities, you need to play to those strengths or you're going to lose the game. Or even worse, you might make somebody else lose the game. Chaos in the Old World is a good example of this. That if people aren't playing their factions appropriately, then that gives an unfair advantage to another faction. That problem is not present here.
Yeah. Well, because most of them are just things you get right off the bat. And so it's not like every turn you're saying, oh, and then I'm going to do this because I'm Zero, or I guess that's the Fallen. But
Well, and that brings up another interesting part, which is that your actions in this game are limited by, so you move these over to move or to take a purchase action or a deliver action, or an outpost action, or a bonus action. And you'll notice that you're limited to only 1 purchase, 2 deliveries, 2 outposts per round. And although you can fight more than once, you can only pillage once and steal from either a raider truck or a raider outpost, or there's a variant in the rulebook that allows you to attack other players on the board that I personally highly, highly recommend. I understand why it's not in the core rulebook, but I really can't emphasize enough how important I think it is. Because here's the thing, even when you add combat in this game, for instance, we were playing with combat last night, but we didn't fight each other once.
Yeah, I thought about attacking you when, at the very end, when I thought that maybe you were gonna win and I was gonna lose.
Exactly.
But that's, I mean, we've talked about this before, but that's kind of the beauty of it, is just because you add player combat, I don't really benefit that much from going and making an enemy out of someone early on, and I'm just gonna get, I mean, it's just resources.
And if you attack a player, you only get 1 resource.
Yeah, and so I would only really attack a player if they were about to win.
Mm-hmm.
But if I need a resource, I'm probably not gonna go attack them, and that could just be my personality and the way that, like, we play games.
But it is interesting because in a game that we played with our friend Carlin, who's actually filming this right now.
Yeah, and we need to give her props too, because she...
Oh man, she wins this game a lot.
Yeah, I think last night was the first
time she's ever lost. Yeah. So there's this one game where she obviously won, and straight up, I knew what her I knew that her objective was to deliver guns to this outpost, because we need to talk about the priority first class objectives. But she had one that was turned up that was basically like deliver guns, and I knew that, and so I attacked her to basically take the guns from her. Not because I wanted the guns, but because I wanted to stop her from winning.
Yeah, still won. She still won. But that's what combat adds to the game, is it adds, I mean, that was so much fun. There was so much tension. It's an opposed roll, and she would have won basically a whole turn sooner than she did. Yeah.
And I think it made a much more dramatic sort of photo finish to the game. It made it a lot closer. So even if you add combat, much of the time players will decide it's not in their best interest. But I think it's better, because another thing is it fills up that pillage slot. So you cannot attack a raider or an enclave if you've attacked another person. And so what it does is it, you know, really forces the players to sort of make the choice, as opposed to the game sort of arbitrarily saying you can't do it. However, it is funny that it needs to be addressed that this game is, at its core, a Euro game, and so as a result, there are game limitations to things like that. You can only pillage once per turn, you can only purchase once per round, you can only deliver twice, etc. The game really does a good job melding this silly post-apocalyptic future. It does not take itself too seriously, which is important, with the theme. And so there'll be these event cards, and I won't tell you about most of them, but there is this one that acknowledges the silliness of the limitation. It's called like deregulation. Yeah, right here. And it allows you to pillage twice per round. And I love the flavor text in this game. Every card has really well-written and fun flavor text you won't always read. But, you know, basically this one acknowledges, he says something like, NUN Grand Council, they're temporarily lifting the regulations restricting our company. I told them none of those made sense anyway. It's like, so the game is sort of tongue-in-cheek in its acknowledgement that, like, yep, it's for game, yeah, I said, something about balance and fairness, whatever, I'll take it. I mean, the reason is because if it wasn't for that, attacking raiders could be a dominant strategy. And that's one of the reasons why it's not, is you can only do it once per round anyway. It really keeps the game balanced, and I'm amazed at how balanced it is.
And that just doesn't even sound like fun if that was what you did, was just attacked raiders and got resources. I mean, I think that it's nice to have those limitations because it forces you to go to different locations, to explore different things. I mean, there's so much, like, you can get temporary modifications where there's T's on the board, and I got those for the first time last night, and they're amazing. You wouldn't necessarily go there if all you were doing was just fighting raiders and getting resources. You have to be creative and think, okay, I have to get from here to here, you know, 2 different locations. What can I do along the way?
But it also depends on how the board is laid out, which is why this game has an interesting balance of, so for instance, you know, if a temp mod shop is on your way to someplace else you're going, you might go there. So although the theme of this game is Mad Max, the playing of it is more like Min Max. Because you need to be very, very efficient with your actions. And so the second thing that you're going to think to yourself is you're going to discover some really dominant strategies. This is after you realize that it's not all about combat. You're going to realize, oh my goodness, I can go to the temp mod shop and I can buy a bunch of things that give me bonuses on deliveries. I can get allies that give me bonuses on deliveries. I can really make a ton of money in this game. And that's going to be your second mistake, is that the thing that you need to be the most efficient with is not how much money you make, but how you use those 5 gears. There's many a time where I have done something along the way towards my final destination. In fact, this is what happened last night, because I was like, well, I might as well pick up a couple things and drop them off on the way. Well, really what I should have done is spent the time moving my car across the landscape to get to my main objective, because this game has a really interesting momentum system where if you take multiple movement actions in a row, you go faster and faster, but you can take a bonus action at the end of a movement and that causes you to lose all your momentum. And that is going to come up again and again and again. You're gonna agonize over that. And so you're gonna get to a point where you think that every action should end with a bonus action, because that's the most efficient thing you can do. But in fact, sometimes trying to be efficient in that way is a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
What?
I am a big fan of, I'll build up momentum if I have to, but if there's something I can do along the way, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, but you can get yourself in trouble doing that, like I did last night.
I did it and I did fine last night.
I'm just saying, you can get yourself in trouble. And also, it's gonna feel like ending your turn anywhere but a city or an outpost is gonna be a waste, but it's not necessarily, because you could end here and move the red truck either into somebody else's space, right, causing them to be attacked, or you can move the red truck towards you.
I was doing that last night when I decided attacking was my main strategy.
Right, so you move the red truck a little bit closer.
And every time I would move it closer to me, Brett would go, interesting.
Because we were playing with this priority first class objective called Vision Quest. So that's the next thing I want to talk about in this game. One of the things I love about this game is that, and this gets back to the whole it's not all about money thing, is it's a Euro pick up and deliver engine, but the win condition is the first person to collect 3 of these priority first class objectives. Well, not necessarily these 3, because there are priority first class objectives hidden in these objective decks. So it's not a point salad at the end. It doesn't matter if you have the most money at the end of the game. It's the first person to do 3 of these things. And what's interesting, and one of the reasons why I think that people are taking 3 hours when the game says 90 to 120 minutes, is they are trying to do all 3 of the public priority first class objectives. That is much harder than doing, say, 1 or even 2 of them and completing a 3rd or a 2nd and a 3rd private priority first class objective. Because in this deck, like I said, there are going to be that have this little stamp down there. At the very beginning of the game, you are given 1 card like this of each faction, and you get to keep 1. And so you're gonna look at your player, you're gonna look at the card you've kept, you're gonna look at the public priority first class objectives, and then you're gonna look at the board, and you're gonna come up with a strategy. And that is one of the most important parts of the entire game. But it might come out that your strategy that you're going for doesn't work and you need to adapt. And so there's a really interesting balance of trying to, having a strategic goal, but also being open to what happens on the board.
Well, you have to, because there's definitely luck in, so to get these cards, you can go to different places on the board where there's the colors for the 3 different factions. I don't know what
yeah, and there's just really quickly, there's a really awesome, and in the book there's a rich story in this game. So there's 3 different factions and they hate each other, and there's a whole world and a story, and you can really get into it. The point is that there's a reason why Corinth is where you get Corinth is where you get the Oracle of Ceres faction cards.
Yes.
Go on.
So anyways, there's some luck in it, because if you go here and you're trying to draw up, you could just not get anything that's priority first class. Or you could get really lucky and you can get 2 priority first class that actually help each other. I had one game where I had to deliver weapons, and then I had to deliver or fulfill demand, in 3 different places, and it just so happened that the demand in a lot of those places was weapons. And that has been Carlin's strategy. But then last night, I don't think that you had the same luck that you've had in the past with those. She's shaking her head no.
Right.
And it, so sometimes you just...
Right. Well, it's interesting.
Screwed.
It's interesting because you pick 3 and you choose 1. And one of my first thoughts when I started playing this game, or when I unpacked it and then I started playing it, is I thought, there's not a lot of cards in any of these decks. I sort of felt like bummed that they hadn't added more. And I've come to realize that that's a feature, not a flaw. Because it's a really nice balance. If you think about it, 3 out of, I don't know the total number, right? You get to look at 3 and keep 1, and then you can even take that action again and you look at 3 and keep 1. It's a really nice balance. It's not a complete... Yes, there's luck, but it's not just like you're top decking a card and you get lucky or not.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance, like everything in this game. Like the event cards. That was another deck where I was like, man, I wish there was more than X amount of event cards. Well, what's nice about this is in your average game, you're gonna see more of these than not. You're gonna see, I would say, at least 60% of the events. Which means that you can predict the things that may or may not happen. And it strikes that really perfect balance that this game strikes with everything that involves luck in this game, which is that you can kind of predict, and yet it's still not 100%. It's not completely determined.
And those aren't always
deterministic.
Bad, which is really fun. No. Some of them are super good. So it's not like that turn. It's on like the Crisis in Zombies Dead of Winter, where you flip it over and you're like, I don't want to know what we have to do. It's like, oh, this could actually be a really cool one where we all get a free resource. But
there's also the one that drops the everything down to 2.
Yes.
But it's in there. And there's a high likelihood, but not 100% that you're going to see it. And so every turn that you haven't seen it, you're going to be anxious that it's in there and then it's going to pop up.
Yeah, and it'll pop up at the worst time when you have a big delivery run turn and all of a sudden it's worth nothing.
But yet even that won't ruin your chances of winning the game. If you're going for all 3 of these priority first class objectives, the game's going to take you 3 hours. And if everyone at the table is doing it, it's going to be a long game. And if one person at the table has figured out the power of these personal objectives or these faction decks, they're going to win the game.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting, like everything in this game has a really nice amount of luck, or the odds are interesting because it's not random, but there's variability. So going for 2 out of 3 and 1 personal is more conservative than going for 1 out of 3, and by far the highest risk but potentially highest reward. I've seen people win by going straight private priority first class objectives, but you have to get the cards, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't, then you're just wasting actions, doing something that's not going to pay out.
And it really just depends on the objective too. Like this one, Blue Screen of Death, everyone was going for this at the end because we needed 1 more. And there's another one where you just give money to New York.
Right.
So
it depends. Whereas some of them are, you have to build this thing and go dig up and anyway. And this is a whole other part of the way this works that is really interesting and led to a photo finish. But everything in this game, like even the combat, I think is super interesting. These dice, they have 1 blank side, 1 side, and two 1 sides, 2 2 sides, and 1 3 side. So there's a high likelihood that you're gonna get something, right? This is not, these dice are not like rolling D6s. They don't have that level of variability. If you pump up your rig so that you are rolling multiple dice,
are getting a +1 on, which I prefer because
it's guaranteed.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is 1 visit to the mod shop and you can be a rolling death machine. Like you can take care of most things in this game, except for, and we haven't talked about him yet, there's a big bad boss guy. Oh, here he is, Grand Emperor Torque, who I'm in the process of painting. As you can tell, I'm trying to paint these and I only got to the Raider truck so far. And he is a real tough mother, okay? Because he's a 7 plus you roll 2 dice and you add that to the total. And as Carlin can attest, you can get yourself into some real trouble trying to fight him. One of my only sort of things that I don't like about the game is, I would say that in the sort of Euro Ameritrash spectrum, it leans pretty on the Euro end, right? So they favored balance to the point that when you go up against Grand Emperor Torque, he just lives over here at the Eyeless Enclave, and you have to go and fight him. And this, I sort of wish that he was driving around the Wasteland like the other Raider trucks, just wrecking people. And I think the reason why they didn't do this is because it would have favored people who went for combat versus others. But this brings up another point that I had. It's not a big deal, but these tiles are exactly the same on both sides. And I get it because it doesn't really, the variability comes in how they come out on the board. But I kind of wish they were at least different art, even though for some reason I love the art in this game, but the tile graphics or whatever. But what I'm thinking about doing is adding like a little black X on them and having that move the Raiders the same way the other Raiders move, right?
Wait, you mean move this guy?
Move this guy, right?
The same way that the other Raiders move?
So if you land on the black X, then you move him just like he was a Raider truck, which maybe is unbalanced, but I think it'd be fun. And you know, we have two sides anyway, so
yeah,
we can
might as well try.
Might as well try. I just think that'd be super fun. By the way, another note that in the rulebook, there's another variant where you can move Raider trucks, not just orthogonally like this, but they can also go all the way across, right? I also highly recommend that. I recommend that you play with the PvP, and I recommend that you play with the ability to move Raiders more. It's really important, I think, to the game. Otherwise, a Raider truck can be all the way over there. I don't know. I think it's nice to have the Raider trucks moving around.
It is, especially because the Raider trucks and all the other components in this game are such high quality.
That's a nice transition, huh?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, the figures are great. I'm looking forward to painting them. I wanted to paint the Raider trucks first because we need to be able to tell them apart, which if you do paint them, do a better job than I did in making them look like they're different colors.
It's really hard. You can only tell in the bed of the truck, and that's usually covered up by resources.
So I'm an idiot.
But for some reason, he can tell them apart.
Well, because I painted them probably. I'm gonna...
Like a parent with twins.
I'm gonna tell...
I don't know. I mean, I just think the attention to detail, like how nice the little resources fit in the back. It's just fun. It adds, I don't know.
Oh yeah, the resources are fantastic. I mean, it really does. It brings in these sort of Ameritrashy elements of this game, which it should be stated. So, for instance, PvP, right? You might not like having PvP in your Euro game. You might not like having direct player versus player interaction in your game, right? If that's you, this is not your game, right? This is a game, this is an Ameritrashed Euro game. This is not a pure pick up and deliver game. This is a game that you enjoy if you do enjoy a little bit of dice rolling. You do enjoy a little bit of luck.
So then would you say that is almost kind of similar to Scythe?
I see what you're doing here. You're trying to keep me... Yeah, well, this game reminds me of two other games. It reminds me of Blood Rage, and it reminds me of Scythe. And because both of those games are Euro games, Blood Rage is a worker placement, think about it. They're Euro games where they have put on great art and a little bit of variability and Ameritrashed it up to make this sort of hybrid experience, which is my personal favorite kind of game. I love them. I love Blood Rage.
I think they're mine too.
Yeah, I think so. It does remind me of Scythe in that way. But actually...
Covered its ears.
I think I might like Wasteland better. Because here's the thing. It plays faster.
He didn't mean it.
And I just think it strikes that balance a little bit better. In Scythe, the only real variability is on card draw, like when you get encounters and stuff, and a lot of the rest of it is like more a classic Euro.
And I feel like we talk more when we play this. Like,
right,
Carlin is our other friend that we play Scythe with. And I feel like at this point, all of us are just silent and like every time it's our turn.
Scythe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there isn't as much, you know, because then eventually we have to fight each other, but it's a lot more.
There's also more player interaction in this game. Even if you're not fighting each other, you are going to Delos and you are going to drop off, I've done this, drop off guns there.
And then they don't want guns anymore.
Which could screw over your friend.
Yeah.
Right?
Which you can get in Scythe with the encounter cards, pretty much is the only, it's just different.
Or you can block people in Scythe. There's a little bit more of that sort of Ameritrash feel to this game with the dice and the theme, and I personally love the art, right?
Yeah.
Now that's something else. If you don't love this art, I still think you should seek this game out and play it once, but for us, I think this game is the complete package because we love this art, we love this setting, and we love this style of game. And you know, if you like your pure Euro game, there are probably better pick up and deliver games that are, I would actually say the Broom Service is probably, if all you want is to focus on picking up and delivering, that's the more pure experience.
But it was, like, I remember when you called me into the office and showed me this game, I just saw the art and I was sold.
And I'm really glad that Jonathan Gilmour told them to go away from space.
Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't like this nearly as much if it was set in space.
Although I think it would work. I honestly think it would work just as well.
But there's just something, like, I like hanging out here better than I would in space.
Well, the theme I really love about this, the backstory and the flavor text is really all excellent, and you don't have to read every card you come across. You can read bits and pieces, and there's a whole campaign, which is the reason why I love this game. The reason why it's in my top 10, maybe my top 5, is that it is so balanced that it really allows for, it opens the world up. By being balanced as well as it is, it feels like a sandbox. It feels like I can, I'll go over to Cornith and I'm gonna pick up faction cards, and that might even dictate how I play the rest of the game, and the theme comes through for me. I really do feel like I'm going on smuggling runs for the Oracle of Ceres, right? I love that I can be like, you know what, I'm just gonna be a raider killing machine. I also love the speed of the game.
It is so variable. It's not like when I play Scythe and I know, okay, I'm Poland, these are the first like 5 moves I'm gonna make because I have to get X, Y, and Z. And don't get me wrong, I really love Scythe. But this is so completely different. I don't know what my strategy is going to be. I have no idea where I'm going to go, what I'm going to see.
But you can strategize a little bit. That's what I kind of like.
Yeah, of course.
It's like,
but I'm just saying.
I get what you're saying, but I just think it's really neat that you can say, okay, I am definitely going for this, but how I get here changes. I like how there are different paths to victory, but I also love that it ends with a sort of like, you are done or not. I hate adding up points at the end of the game. And also, I love that thematically, you're essentially playing to be the employee of the month for the Wasteland Express delivery service. Because that's essentially thematically what's happening.
No, it's a fun game. It's a fun universe to hang out in, and I think it added a lot to our collection.